Mm. Hi, hello everybody, and welcome to my channel. One thing on my head today. Don't ask me why. Ouch! Just woke up too long ago. Just woke up not too long ago, and the Farmer's Almanac random thing for today is "Well done is better than well said." So doing rather than speaking, being rather than seeming to be. Yesterday was about crispy bacon, so that's why we didn't look at it. Because I remembered that I was like, mm. Yesterday we also ended on the Queen of Pentacles. Today, the energy is shifting over to. Dun, 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 the Ace of Swords. Okay. It would have been interesting if it were the Queen of Swords, because Queen of Pentacles, Queen of Swords, that's what I went looking for, right? But the Ace of Swords is here after the Queen of Pentacles. And the Ace of Swords, aces are sort of like portals. They are boundless potential within that realm because it sort of represents the realm as a whole, all in one. Now, in this deck, there's no crown on this Ace of Swords. And when it comes to an Ace of Swords, typically I gauge the distance between the crown and the hilt, or I use the distance between the crown and the hilt to get a feel of how much we understand or comprehend whatever it is that the Ace of Swords is giving to us, or how much like background knowledge or information we have. Now, with no crown being present, we could say that there's absolutely no context, but I'm not necessarily feeling that. It feels like a deeper understanding and awareness of how things work down here, especially coming off of that Queen of Pentacles. And that's typically, when I look at the dice, that's typically an energy that I save more for the King of Pentacles. But the Queen of Pentacles is also aware. The Queen of Pentacles is just a little more like people focused rather than self focused, right? And so it's like, whereas the King of Pentacles would use his knowledge to sort of further his own ends and means, the Queen of Pentacles would share it. And I guess going back to the masculine versus the feminine, it's not, I mean, there is a certain amount of projection, but it also needs to be able to expand and grow into something that can take form and shape. And also, I think the Ace of Swords is here because it's like, while we wish for things like world peace and stuff like that, maybe there's never, I don't want to say never, because there are always like some of the things that are now closer to the forefront of our minds and awareness, that they've been there needing to be addressed. But it's kind of sort of like there's this feeling of there's more on the line now, or there's more crises happening at once to a greater scale that is causing more people to wish for, manifest things beyond just like a new job or a car or somebody to spend their time with. And learning how to magnetize and to polarize those things that we wish for so that they attract what it is that we're wishing or aiming to attract. Excuse me. It deepens our understanding of things. because now we're asking for bigger on a greater scale. And I think at the same time, it gives us an opportunity to understand ourselves better through the reflective nature of reality. And it's a knowledge that's to be used. It's not one there just to be had, right? It's like it would be stored in the crown. And then it compares what we have in our storage to what this brand new information is. But here it's just brand new information and it's in hand. So there may not be too much of a basis on how to properly how to perform at the level that we have the ability to. And I don't want to say like what it takes, but it's like how to use it. Because there is a sort of fine balance here, I think. And again, it's to be used. There's also, it's a Five of Swords energy, but it's not necessarily combative. It's like communal. Like everyone gets their own ace. And there are these beams of light that come from the point of the sword. And when you point them at each other, those lights connect, and then it creates a portal or a gateway for something to pass through or for something to be revealed. Kind of like the politic, the Three of Wands, a little bit. Also with an energy of the Three of Cups, and then, Cups and Wands make steam, which is air, right? But there's a whole new way we have to begin to perceive of things in order to get where it is that we're going. And also, Mercury went retrograde like an hour and a half to 2 hours ago. So, welcome to Mercury retrograde in Aquarius. Excuse me. I want to see where the moon is going to be when we have that new moon. I want to see how close it's going to be to where Mercury went retrograde. It should be in roughly 14 days. Oh, it's February 11th. I know that. So it's 23 degrees. So it's like 3 degrees away from from where Mercury went stationed retrograde. Jupiter and Venus will be conjuncting to the degree when we have that new moon in Aquarius. And Jupiter and Venus are the two like beneficiary or beneficent planets. So for them to be conjuncting in Aquarius could be huge. The conjunction with Saturn is getting weaker because they're like 6 degrees apart. So it's still there. And also, I feel like Pluto, now that all of the planets are out of the way, I think Pluto's gonna. I don't want to say like intensify, but it feels like there were things for Pluto to do in Capricorn that it wasn't necessarily doing because it had to transform all of the other planets. It was like decontamination. It's like Pluto was the decontamination in Capricorn before they fully entered Aquarius. Even though Saturn retrograded from Aquarius back into Capricorn. It got like a taste of Aquarius. And then it was like, oh, snap. I need to go back and re up because I'm not ready for this yet. But now that Pluto's like decontaminated the other planets, it can focus on doing in Capricorn, but it's kind of sort of there to do. Not that it wasn't there to assist the other planets with the ways that they need to transform or the things that they needed to shed before we come into whatever space we're coming into. And it's definitely a time of like unprecedented acceleration. And it's unprecedented because it's like anything, like it's always been the case that anything can happen and completely change everything forever. But now it's like some of the things that are happening and some of the systems that are subjected to change, it's like we heard and some people knew that a lot of these systems would be falling, failing, or changing. So after the video yesterday, I think it was the Oxygenated video, I got on Twitter and somebody had replied to me and they were like, oh, that's Uranus, Taurus, square Saturn and Aquarius, but also Jupiter is in Aquarius. So that Uranus Taurus square, that Uranus Saturn square is what can put a lot of pressure on these systems. But the presence of Jupiter like gives us basically a light at the end of the tunnel. And Jupiter is further into Aquarius than Saturn is. And it's further than Uranus is in Taurus. So it's also breaking that square. And so, and like Mercury went there and retrograded back. So it feels like even within the energy of Aquarius, there's this, it's a road that's being paved in front of us, not so fast that like we can see it before we take our next step, but as we step, there will be ground beneath our feet. And if we're not moving fast enough, we're going to get pushed probably in some ways. And it's not that, we have to be running. If you get a little scared and your legs shaking, you can't move, then you got a friend to push you. And that's what friends do, right? There's also like an energy, usually it would be like an ace of staffs, wands. Oh, I was going to say rods. Energy, but there is a little bit of a parting energy here too. Like when Moses split the Red Sea. It was the Red Sea, right? My brain is still partially asleep, so forgive me. Because we can see it like peeling back on the sides because the sword is standing up. And it doesn't feel like it's necessarily piercing the veil. It feels like it's like phagocytosis. I believe that's, again, my brain is asleep, but I think it's phagocytosis. It's like when vesicles are made in cells or whatever. So it's like there's this bubble that is the veil, right? It's this bubble. And when we enter, it pushes in on the bubble. And then it creates, you can't see it, but it's this little bubble right here in between my thumbs, that little space. And so it's like we're navigating through the veil. We haven't crossed into it because it's like it's bending around us, like when they went through the sea, kind of. But that wasn't just like an area around them, it like split the whole sea. But imagine that the sea only split like in a certain radius around them. So there's all the sea out here, but then there's that dry patch as they move through. Or there's the area where the sea is split until they reach the end and it opens on the other side. It's like that. And so it's not necessarily a full engagement, full interaction, but it does allow us to explore areas that were previously unexplorable because it's within that land. And there are some things that we're going to find that we're meant to find. We have the capability to find some things that we're meant to. things that it's like it would have taken a lot longer if we were trying to pierce the veil and then navigate through those whispery lands. It's like abstract and not completely defined, and it's easy to get lost or misconstrue things. And so it's like as the veil sort of forms this membrane around us, or I guess that would be the light. And that's what we had the opportunity to find in the fog. It's this internal light. And so when we reach the veil, and let's say that the veil is a realm of shadow, because it's easier for the metaphor. When we reach the veil, it's a hermit energy. So we have our lantern, and we have the circle of all that that lantern illuminates. And a dark room is still a dark room. But because of our lantern, there's a little bit of the room that we can see. Now imagine that the lantern isn't necessarily projecting outwards. It's like projecting a circle around you. So it gives you an area of stuff that you can see. And so you're navigating with this lantern. It's not going to be like extremely easy, but it's going to be easier than if we were navigating this space in the dark without a lantern. And it's like there will be some things that we just find. Things that weren't pushed away, or things that didn't recoil because of everything else in the dark sort of moving around trying to avoid the light, right? And I think I got this feeling when I saw the Six of Swords in the Witch's Tarot one time. It was this energy of, I don't remember the word, but it's like if you have a metal detector on a boat, and let's say there were some precious swords that got tossed into the lake. Let's say the lady of the lake is like, you can get the sword, but I'm not bringing it up for you. You got to go and get it. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's like a whole lake, girl. And I don't want to drown. I don't have gills. How am I supposed to do this? So luckily you get some 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 25th century magic. Okay, or some like 20th century magic. That is a metal detector. And so now, instead of being down there, you just skim the surface of the lake and you use your metal detector. And where it detects metal, you just send down a magnetized arm. It hits something, you pull it up, boom, you got one of the 6 swords that you need to get from this lake before you move forward, or whatever. Let's call them sword fragments, because this is the Ace of Swords. Oh, I like that. So you are assembling a holy blade, delving into this lake, into the veil space, using only the light of your lantern, hermit, or this metal detector on your 6 of Swords vessel. And you're assembling these fragments. Now, a fragmented sword does not a sword make. And luckily the hilt is like all in one piece or whatever. And so they still have to be tempered and melded back together through pressure and heat and a master craftsman. So now we introduce an 8 of Pentacles energy. It's an 8 of Pentacles energy and a Knight of Pentacles energy that comes on top of that Hermit, so that he becomes more proficient at navigating unknown spaces, at navigating veil spaces. Now there's a potential there for Archangel of Mysteries, King of Pentacles type energy to come in. And what that does is, in the SKT, the Archangel of Mysteries is the one who's permitted to walk all realms, and she has a lantern as well. And she can guide lost souls from the underworlds back to at least the middle worlds, right? And so in that, it's like our light becomes luminous enough that we get a large enough bubble in the dark room that it can accommodate more than one person. It's like if you have a big enough umbrella when it's raining, then neither person will get wet If you have a smaller umbrella, you can like cuddle in, huddle in. You can huddle in close, and maybe like only a piece of your shoulder gets wet. A piece of your shoulder. Okay. A part of your shoulder, you get partially wet instead of completely drenched. And a smaller umbrella is better than no umbrella. But it's a largening of the umbrella. It's a intensifying of the hermit's lantern that allows you to guide others who align to at least coming out of the dark. Because there are going to be some things that are attracted to a light in the dark, but they're not necessarily interested in leaving the dark. They're just curious what the light is. So anyway, here comes that Eight of Pentacles, Knight of Pentacles into potential King of Pentacles energy, where we're learning to live by the light of the Hermit, where we're learning to trust. But another thing is, it's like with Hermit energy, if you never go anywhere, you're not going to see anything different. And it's like sometimes we have, and I talk about it, but I'll talk about it again. Sometimes we have this conception of divine timing as if we are a hermit in a dark room with a lantern and we just stand there waiting for the lights to turn on. And it's like, you could do that. I mean, Patience was over here yesterday. But it's not necessarily for you to. It's like you have a lantern. Move and you'll see more. Don't just stand there waiting for the lights to come on, because it's like you got a job to do. And also, it's like the more you navigate that space, the more comfortable you are in navigating that space, the faster you can walk, the better your brain and your eyes are able to coordinate between that which is at the edge of what your light illuminates and like the perception of it, right? And so it could be this fear like, oh, well, if we're moving too fast in the dark, if we come upon something, we may not have the reaction time to back up or stop. And so you go slow. And it's like your reaction time gets better. You get a little less nervous because when you're first doing it, it's scary. And you don't know if you're doing it right or whatever. And you maybe never know if you're doing it right, but again, that's whatever. The lantern gets brighter, you get bolder and braver. Things become more beautiful. You start to see all the things that can only be seen in this space. And then you start to see things that have yet to be seen in this space. And then you become that knight or that king of pentacles from that Eight of Pentacles place of practiced navigation of this space. And all the while you're navigating the space, you're understanding and comprehending more and more the way that some things work beyond the apparent workings of those things. Because if there's one thing that we know about life, is that it can be very uncertain. But what if there is something that navigated, what if there's something that motivated a lot of the uncertain things that happen in life? Those things you would find in this dark room veiled space. If they don't get cleaned, right? And maybe that's what this is. Maybe there are hermits positioning themselves in this veiled space from different entry points. And there are things that they need to find. That Ace of Swords is one of them, right? Sometimes you find a whole sword, sometimes you find a fragmented sword, or you find pieces of a sword that then you have to Eight of Pentacles into the Knight or the King of Pentacles temper into a blade through your experiences. Most of the time, you're probably not going to find a whole sword. And even if you do find a whole sword, you're going to have to learn how to use it. So there's still something for you to do. But once the swords are whole, it's like you touch the point of the sword to the light in the lantern, and it absorbs it, and then it becomes this shining sword of light that you can just hold up, and then it creates a larger. That's probably when you go to the King of Pentacles side of that energy, because when you hold that sword up, it creates this larger bubble of light that encompasses a lot more. But there's also, again, that this coordination within that space of these field swords that then point towards each other, and they shoot these beams of light that connect somewhere, and then maybe that's when the lights come on. Or maybe the lights don't come like all the way on, maybe they're like dim, like kind of like movie theater lights, when it's like dim-ish. It's not like completely dark, but it's like dim, you know what I mean? Because I don't know if it's ever going to be like as bright as day outside in that space. I don't want to say never. In some dimensions, I'm sure it is. Or at least in these parts, I'm sure it is. In higher dimensions. Because when you sit at a higher dimensionality, you can see the things below you pretty easily. But that's what introduces more light in that space overall. And so I guess that's what the hermits who are waiting on divine timing, that's what they're waiting for. They're waiting on the other hermits who become the masters of mysteries to illuminate even more of the way. And we all have our own part. It's fine. And we all have things to learn and experience while we're in those. I'm just saying, if you got the capability to move a little bit, then you get more comfortable. Potentially, but maybe it's not your path. And again, like, these are swords in hand, ready to use. Ooh. Oh, yeah, that was the I just did this. It's when I use the angel spread and the baron spread together. Because over here, the Four of Swords in that deck is the Reaper. The Four of Swords came out at rest, and then the Reaper came out, and then beyond that was the Five of Cups on this leg of it. Well, I guess it's that leg, technically. And that was Mercury is retrograde in Aquarius. Okay. It was about the Reaper awakening to that transformative power, and then the Reaper, I said the unicorn sacrificed its horn to be the blade of the scythe of death, and that's what allows it to cut through dimensions, and that's this Ace of Swords. It's an Ace of Swords when we're at rest and it's laying by us. A typical Four of Swords is depicted with three swords hanging up on a wall and then somebody sleeping with the sword next to them. The sword next to them is the scythe. So even when it's a sword, it has the power to cut through and cleave through dimensions and to create spaces where there isn't a space. And maybe that's what that bubble is. It's one space. It's like an outside space interjected into an inside space. And it keeps all of the properties of that inside space, because it's like that's what holds your air so you can breathe in the void that is the veil. Maybe there's not a lot of oxygen there, and if you get lost in there, girl, you may just disappear one day. Who knows? People go missing all the time, and not like kidnapped people. But anyway, back to the metaphor. Back to this. That's what this Ace of Swords has the capability to do. And it can introduce light in a dark space or darkness in a light space. That's the one I saw that and I was like, oh, I don't know about that one. Who doing that? But it's not always bad. Because if things are too bright, then you can't see. So maybe it introduces enough shade, or it lowers the brightness enough for you to differentiate one thing from another thing. So you're not just like wandering around basically. Instead of wandering in the dark, you're wandering in a room that's so bright that you can't see anything. And that's the Queen of Swords, right? From the Aksunare. It's the Queen of Swords energy as well. Or the Queen of Swords energy is like a precursor to this. There's a lot of energies within this Ace of Swords. And it is a question of, in some ways, like, what things truly matter? And are we asking the right questions? Or are we looking at the right things? Are we giving our attention to the proper things in the proper way, in the proper amount? Or are we getting subsumed and consumed by these things? Or are we like ignoring them completely? There is a sweet spot here. And that's where I'm going to leave this today. I feel like that's a good space. I think that's a good spot. I'm excited to see what tomorrow will bring. I am enjoying this thoroughly. I don't think I titled this right. Did I change the title on this? Hold up. Oh, I did. Okay. I just put question marks instead of the V for 5. Okay. All right. Well, that's what I got. I will see y'all tomorrow. I'm not gonna say that I'm not gonna be back because I've been back. I want to hop on the other channel and see what's up over there, but maybe not. One thing I will do today, because I'm feeling it, is I'm gonna pull one of these babies. One of these Disology cards. I'm low-key feeling an arrow that pierces the heavens a little bit. Or, oh, I forgot I'm working with limited space today. I don't know why I do these like this, with like the split screen. I just felt it and I like it. Oh, gosh. Okay. Oh, I'll take you. It says material intervention, the coming of spring, and mastering the game of life. It's the red joker. Bottom of the deck is the beginnings of self-realization, caring for one's mental space, and preparing to welcome something big. Preparing to welcome something big with the coming of spring is huge. Material intervention, it's all about things happening in a way, it's like physical. Kind of like that energy yesterday. The influence isn't necessarily tangible, but the reaction to that influence is. And it comes in a way that you can observe it, maybe even feel it. It doesn't have to be. It interferes, interacts with your life in some way. And it's an intervention, so it's typically a correction of a course or a reminder or a little message that's, hey, like, okay, I know you've been waiting on divine timing for a minute, but maybe it's time to take a few steps, you know? Put that lantern to work a little bit. And then mastering the game of life, that's just that Ace of Swords understanding and knowledge as a whole. That's what we're coming into. And it's a mastery and an understanding of, not necessarily a mastery and a dominion over. Because I don't know if life necessarily does too much dominion over. I don't know if spirit is like, yeah, dominion over other people's lives, because reality is a shared space, and there are things that other people have the right to that we have to respect. And so, is there some control and dominion? Sure. Is there absolute and complete and total control and dominion over a shared space? Maybe not. But for those who cooperate with it, it's more than willing and happy to cooperate. So that's what I got. I hope y'all have a good whatever, whenever. I hope you are acting in alignment to make that what you wish to experience your reality, because things are happening and capable of happening in so many different ways right now, because there's so much unbridled potential just buzzing and whizzing around, and it's some of it is just waiting for some positive direction, because it's like it wants to do something. It's like, please, like, use me so I can do something. Like, we're it's like when you have something, let's say you have air in a balloon or water in a vessel. No, air or water doesn't necessarily want anything. But when you fill that vessel well over its capacity, the air or the water wants to escape. If it's bursting at the seams, it's already naturally trying to like eject itself from that. It just needs a little bit of pressure to create that opening. So we're just creating little openings for things that already want to flow in. But it's like the spaces that are easiest for them to access are being guarded because there are things that don't want you to be happy or whatever. It's just blocked by that which you have the most, that which stands in its way, right? It's like if you're trying to manifest happiness but you actively sabotage everything, then to at least maintain that happiness, you're going to have to address what makes you sabotage it. That's something that wants to come into your experience, but something is standing in its way. You're going to have to address it before you poke at the wall. And then you're like, hey, like, it's safe to come out. And then it just like starts flowing everywhere. And you're like, oh my gosh. Right? Anyway, okay. All right. Bye. I may be back. I might not be. We'll see.